The morning sun cast long shadows across the marble floors of Kensington Palace as Princess Charlotte skipped through the ornate corridors, her small shoes echoing against the polished stone. At 8 years old, she possessed the curious nature that came naturally to children, always eager to explore every corner of the grand residence that had been her home since birth. The palace buzzed with quiet activity as staff members prepared for another day of royal duties and obligations. Charlotte had woken early that Tuesday, excited about the planned balcony appearance later that afternoon. The royal family was scheduled to greet well-wishers who had gathered outside the palace gates, a tradition that always filled her with nervous excitement. She loved seeing the crowds of people waving flags and calling out cheerful greetings, though the height of the balcony sometimes made her stomach flutter with anxiety. As she wandered through the East Wing, Charlotte noticed unusual tension in the air. Staff members whispered in hushed tones as they passed each other in the hallways, their faces marked with concern. Something felt different about this particular day, though the young princess couldn't quite understand what had changed. The atmosphere seemed heavier somehow, as if an invisible cloud had settled over the usually cheerful palace. Camilla, the queen consort, had arrived earlier that morning for what was scheduled to be a routine family meeting. However, those who worked closely with the royal household had noticed subtle signs of agitation in her demeanor. Her usual composed smile seemed forced, and she had dismissed her personal assistant with an unusually sharp tone. The staff had learned to read these small signals over the years, understanding that even royalty experienced moments of stress and frustration. Charlotte's governess, Mrs. Henderson, had been searching for the young princess throughout the morning. The child had a tendency to disappear into the maze-like corridors of the palace, often losing track of time as she discovered new rooms or revisited favorite hiding spots. Today's schedule included lessons in French and mathematics, followed by preparation for the afternoon's public appearance. However, Charlotte seemed more interested in adventure than academics. The security detail assigned to protect the royal family maintained their professional vigilance despite the seemingly routine nature of the day. Guard Captain Thompson had been with the family for over 15 years, developing an almost supernatural ability to sense when situations might require extra attention. His team consisted of 12 highly trained professionals who rotated shifts to ensure constant protection for every member of the household. As Charlotte continued her exploration, she discovered a section of the palace she rarely visited. The western corridors contained guest quarters and formal reception rooms that were typically reserved for state occasions. The thick carpets muffled her footsteps as she peered into elegant chambers filled with priceless artwork and furniture that had witnessed centuries of royal history. Each room told stories of kings and queens who had walked these same halls decades before her birth. Meanwhile, Camilla had been reviewing the afternoon schedule with the palace's chief of staff. The balcony appearance was expected to last approximately 20 minutes, with specific protocols governing where each family member would stand and how they would interact with the waiting crowd. Security briefings had covered every possible scenario, from weather contingencies to crowd control measures. However, no amount of planning could account for the unpredictable nature of human emotions and personal tensions. The morning progressed with typical royal precision, each activity carefully timed and coordinated. Breakfast had been served in the family dining room, where conversation remained polite but somewhat strained. Charlotte had chatted enthusiastically about a book she was reading, while the adults exchanged meaningful glances that suggested underlying concerns. The child remained blissfully unaware of any adult complications, focused instead on her own small world of games and discoveries. By mid-morning, the palace's communication team had confirmed that media representatives were already gathering outside the gates. Photographers adjusted their equipment while reporters prepared for the brief but significant public appearance. The balcony moments always generated considerable interest, providing rare glimpses into the royal family's dynamics and offering photo opportunities that would be analyzed and discussed for days afterward. Charlotte had eventually made her way to the library, one of her favorite rooms in the entire palace. The towering shelves reached toward ornate ceilings decorated with painted scenes of historical battles and peaceful countryside landscapes. She had discovered a collection of children's books that previous royal children had enjoyed, their pages worn smooth by countless readings over the generations. The quiet sanctuary provided a perfect escape from the increasing activity throughout the rest of the building. Security cameras throughout the palace captured every movement, their feeds monitored by trained professionals in a central control room. The guards maintained constant communication through discreet earpieces, sharing updates about locations and activities of family members. Captain Thompson periodically checked in with his team leaders, ensuring that coverage remained comprehensive despite the relaxed atmosphere of a typical Tuesday morning. The palace's head butler, Mr. Davies, had been coordinating with the kitchen staff to prepare light refreshments for after the balcony appearance. Royal protocol demanded attention to every detail, from the temperature of beverages to the precise arrangement of pastries on silver serving trays. The domestic staff took pride in maintaining standards that reflected the dignity and tradition of the monarchy, regardless of whether the occasion was a state dinner or a simple family gathering. As noon approached, Charlotte reluctantly left her literary sanctuary to return to her regular duties. Mrs. Henderson had finally located her charge and gently reminded the princess about her afternoon obligations. The governess had worked with royal children for most of her career, understanding the unique challenges of balancing normal childhood development with the extraordinary demands of public life. The afternoon preparations began with typical efficiency, though several staff members noticed subtle changes in the day's rhythm. Camilla had requested specific arrangements for the balcony appearance, modifications that seemed minor but created ripples of adjustment throughout the carefully planned schedule. The requests themselves appeared reasonable, but experienced palace workers recognized signs that suggested deeper currents of tension beneath the surface of royal composure. Charlotte was escorted to her private chambers to prepare for the public appearance. Her outfit had been selected days in advance, a cheerful blue dress that complemented her natural coloring while maintaining the dignity expected of royal attire. The young princess enjoyed these special occasions, though she sometimes felt overwhelmed by the attention and responsibility that came with her position in the family hierarchy. The security team conducted their final briefings, reviewing protocols and confirming communication procedures. Captain Thompson emphasized the importance of maintaining awareness throughout the event, reminding his guards that even routine appearances required complete professionalism. Years of experience had taught him that the most dangerous moments often occurred during seemingly safe and predictable situations. The stage was being set for an afternoon that would begin like countless others, but would soon take an unexpected turn that would test the skills, training, and quick thinking of everyone involved in protecting the royal family. The afternoon sun blazed overhead as the royal family gathered in the private salon adjacent to the famous balcony. Charlotte stood before a full-length mirror while her lady's maid made final adjustments to her dress and hair. The young princess could hear the distant sounds of the crowd gathering below, their excited voices carrying through the thick palace walls. Her heart began to flutter with the familiar mixture of excitement and nervousness that always accompanied public appearances. Camilla entered the preparation room with measured steps, her expression carefully controlled, but somehow different from her usual composed demeanor. She wore an elegant emerald dress that complemented her carefully styled hair, every detail of her appearance reflecting the meticulous standards expected of senior royalty. However, those who knew her well might have detected a subtle tension in her shoulders and a slight tightness around her eyes that suggested internal stress. The queen consort approached Charlotte with what appeared to be warm interest, commenting on the child's appearance and asking about her morning activities. Their conversation seemed pleasant enough on the surface, but Mrs. Henderson, who had been observing from across the room, noticed something unusual in Camilla's tone and body language. Years of working with children had sharpened the governess's instincts for detecting when adults might not have entirely innocent intentions. Charlotte responded to Camilla's attention with typical childhood honesty, chattering about her morning adventures and expressing her excitement about greeting the crowds. The young princess had always been naturally friendly and open, traits that made her popular with the public, but sometimes created vulnerability in complex family dynamics. She possessed the trusting nature common to children who had been raised in protective environments. As the time for the balcony appearance approached, the family members were called to take their positions. The ornate doors leading to the balcony remained closed while final security checks were completed. Captain Thompson personally inspected the balcony's railings and structural integrity, a routine procedure that had become second nature after years of coordinating royal appearances. His team positioned themselves at strategic points throughout the area, maintaining discreet but comprehensive coverage. The crowd below had grown significantly larger than initially anticipated, with several hundred people gathered in the courtyard and spilling into the adjacent streets. Photographers positioned their long-lens cameras, while television crews prepared for live broadcasts. The energy of the waiting crowd created an atmosphere of celebration and anticipation that could be felt even inside the palace walls. Children waved small flags while their parents held phones ready to capture the historic moment. Palace protocol officers made final announcements over their communication systems, confirming timing and positions for each family member. The balcony appearance had been choreographed with military precision, with specific locations designated for each person based on their position in the line of succession and their comfort level with public exposure. Charlotte had been assigned a spot near the center but slightly back from the main railing, a position that would keep her visible while providing some protection from the overwhelming nature of crowd attention. However, as the doors finally opened and the family began to move onto the balcony, Camilla made what appeared to be a spontaneous suggestion. She gently took Charlotte's arm and suggested they move to a different position, one that would provide a better view of the crowd and create more opportunities for photographs. The request seemed reasonable enough, but it would place the young princess much closer to the balcony's edge than originally planned. Charlotte, trusting and eager to please, readily agreed to the repositioning. She followed Camilla toward the front of the balcony, unaware that this movement was taking her away from the carefully planned safety protocols that had been established for her protection. The change seemed minor to casual observers, but it represented a significant deviation from security procedures that had been developed through years of experience and careful consideration. Mrs. Henderson, who had been granted permission to observe from just inside the balcony doors, immediately recognized the problem with this new arrangement. Her experience with children's safety combined with her understanding of royal protocols created an instant alarm in her mind. However, her position as governess limited her authority to intervene directly in what appeared to be a family decision made by a senior royal. The crowd below erupted in cheers as the royal family appeared on the balcony, their enthusiasm creating a wall of sound that seemed to rise from the courtyard like a living thing. Camera flashes created a constant sparkle of light as photographers captured every moment of the appearance. Charlotte waved tentatively at first, then with growing confidence as she absorbed the crowd's positive energy and genuine affection. Camilla maintained her position next to Charlotte, continuing to guide the child's movements with gentle but persistent suggestions. She pointed out various sections of the crowd, encouraging Charlotte to move closer to the railing to acknowledge different groups of well-wishers. Each suggestion seemed innocent enough, but collectively they were drawing the young princess into an increasingly precarious position near the balcony's edge. Captain Thompson, monitoring the appearance from his position near the balcony doors, began to feel the familiar tension that warned him something was developing beyond the normal parameters of a routine event. His trained eyes tracked the movements of each family member, noting the deviation from planned positions and the gradual migration of Charlotte toward the front edge of the balcony. Years of experience had taught him to trust these instinctive warnings, even when no immediate threat was apparent. The balcony itself stood approximately 40 feet above the courtyard below, a height that would be dangerous for anyone but potentially fatal for a small child. The ornate stone railing reached about waist-high for an adult, but for Charlotte, it came closer to chest level, providing less protective barrier than might be assumed by casual observers. The railing's decorative elements, while beautiful, created gaps and handholds that could potentially facilitate climbing in ways that solid barriers would prevent. Charlotte continued to wave at the crowd, completely absorbed in the experience and unaware of any potential danger. Her natural enthusiasm and desire to connect with the people below made her responsive to Camilla's suggestions about positioning and movement. The young princess possessed the fearless confidence common to children who had not yet developed adult awareness of risk and consequence. Meanwhile, other family members on the balcony were focused on their own interactions with the crowd, acknowledging cheers and maintaining the dignified presence expected of royal appearances. The formal nature of such events created a certain isolation for each participant, making it difficult to monitor activities happening elsewhere on the balcony. Everyone assumed that others were following established protocols and maintaining appropriate safety awareness. The crowd's enthusiasm continued to build as the appearance progressed, their energy creating an intoxicating atmosphere that could be overwhelming for adults and potentially dangerous for children who might be tempted to take risks in order to better connect with the adoring public. The genuine affection displayed by the well-wishers was beautiful to witness, but it also created pressures and temptations that required careful management. Security personnel stationed throughout the area maintained their vigilant watch, but their attention was necessarily divided between crowd control and protection of the royal family. The complexity of managing such events required coordination between multiple agencies and disciplines, from close protection specialists to crowd management experts to medical personnel standing by for any emergency. As the minutes passed, Captain Thompson's concern continued to grow as he observed Camilla's persistent guidance of Charlotte toward increasingly dangerous positions near the balcony's edge. What had begun as seemingly innocent suggestions was developing into a pattern that suggested either extremely poor judgment or something more deliberately concerning. His professional instincts, honed by years of protecting the royal family, told him that intervention might soon become necessary. The critical moment arrived when Camilla suggested that Charlotte climb onto the decorative stone ledge that ran along the base of the balcony railing. She claimed it would give the young princess a better view and allow her to wave more effectively to the crowd below. To an 8-year-old child caught up in the excitement of the moment, this seemed like a wonderful adventure that would help her better connect with all the people who had come to see her. Charlotte began to step up onto the ledge, her small hands gripping the ornate railing for balance. The stone surface was only about 8 inches wide, barely enough space for secure footing, especially for a child wearing dress shoes on potentially slippery stone. The height differential created by standing on the ledge brought her center of gravity much closer to the point where a simple loss of balance could result in a catastrophic fall. Captain Thompson had seen enough. His years of training and experience crystallized into immediate action as he recognized that the situation had moved beyond the realm of poor judgment into genuine life-threatening danger. Without hesitation, he broke from his position near the balcony doors and moved swiftly across the space, his focus entirely concentrated on reaching Charlotte before any accident could occur. His movement was smooth and professional, designed to be quick without creating panic or drawing unnecessary attention from the crowd below. However, His sudden appearance and rapid approach toward the royal family immediately signaled to the other security personnel that an emergency was developing. Team members throughout the area quietly shifted their positions and increased their alertness levels. Mrs. Henderson, who had been watching the scene with growing alarm, felt a surge of relief as she saw Captain Thompson taking action. Her maternal instincts had been screaming warnings throughout the previous minutes, but her limited authority had prevented her from intervening directly. Now that security personnel were responding, she moved closer to provide whatever assistance might be needed. The crowd below remained completely unaware of the developing drama on the balcony above them. Their continued cheering and flag-waving created a celebratory atmosphere that contrasted sharply with the tension among those who understood the true nature of the situation. Camera operators continued to capture what they assumed were normal family interactions, having no idea that they might be documenting a rescue in progress. As Captain Thompson closed the distance to Charlotte's position, he could see that the young princess was struggling slightly with her balance on the narrow ledge. Her dress shoes provided minimal traction on the smooth stone surface, and the height was clearly making her nervous despite her initial enthusiasm. The captain's training allowed him to quickly assess exactly how to approach without startling her into a sudden movement that could precipitate the very accident he was trying to prevent. Camilla noticed the security captain's approach and turned to face him with an expression of surprised indignation. She demanded to know why he was interrupting what she characterized as a harmless family moment, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to having her wishes respected without question. However, Captain Thompson had sworn an oath to protect the royal family, and that duty superseded all other considerations, including the preferences of senior royals. The captain addressed Charlotte directly in calm, reassuring tones, suggesting that she step down from the ledge for her own safety. He explained that the stone surface could be slippery and that her parents would prefer for her to wave from a more secure position. His approach was gentle but firm, designed to encourage compliance without creating fear or embarrassment for the young princess. Charlotte looked between Captain Thompson and Camilla, clearly confused by the conflicting messages she was receiving. Her 8-year-old mind struggled to understand why the security officer seemed concerned about something that had been presented to her as a fun opportunity. The adult tensions swirling around her were beyond her ability to fully comprehend, but she could sense that something important was happening. Other family members on the balcony had begun to notice the unusual activity near Charlotte's position. Their attention was drawn by Captain Thompson's presence and the subtle changes in the security team's positioning throughout the area. However, the formal nature of the public appearance limited their ability to intervene directly without creating a visible disruption that would alarm the crowd below. Captain Thompson made the decision to act decisively rather than allow the situation to continue developing. He stepped forward and gently but firmly guided Charlotte down from the dangerous ledge, his movements careful and protective. The young princess offered no resistance, apparently relieved to have the scary height reduced, even if she didn't fully understand the captain's motivation. As Charlotte's feet touched the solid balcony floor, Captain Thompson positioned himself between the child and Camilla, effectively blocking any attempt to continue the dangerous positioning. His body language remained professional and respectful, but his intent was unmistakably clear. The safety of Princess Charlotte had become his primary focus, and he would not allow that safety to be compromised, regardless of who might object. The crowd below continued their enthusiastic cheering, completely unaware that a potential tragedy had just been averted. Their innocent celebration provided a strange counterpoint to the serious drama that had unfolded above them. Camera operators captured images of what appeared to be normal interactions between security personnel and the royal family, having no understanding of the true significance of the moments they were documenting. Mrs. Henderson immediately moved to Charlotte's side, providing both physical comfort and emotional reassurance to the young princess, who was clearly confused by the sudden change in adults' behavior around her. The governess used her experience with children to help Charlotte understand that Captain Thompson had been looking out for her safety, turning a potentially traumatic moment into a lesson about the importance of the security team's protective role. Other security personnel had quietly repositioned themselves to provide additional coverage of the situation without making their movements obvious to the public below. The team's training emphasized the importance of responding to developing threats while maintaining the appearance of normal operations. Their coordinated response demonstrated the high level of professionalism and preparedness that characterized Royal Protection Services. Camilla's reaction to the intervention was carefully controlled, but clearly indicated displeasure with what she viewed as unnecessary interference. However, she was experienced enough in royal protocols to understand that creating a visible confrontation during a public appearance would be inappropriate and potentially damaging. Her response was limited to meaningful glances and subtle expressions that conveyed her feelings without creating an obvious scene. The remainder of the balcony appearance proceeded according to established protocols, with Charlotte safely positioned away from the dangerous edge and under the careful watch of both Captain Thompson and Mrs. Henderson. The young princess gradually relaxed and returned to enjoying the experience of connecting with the enthusiastic crowd, though she remained closer to the protective adults around her. As the appearance concluded and the royal family moved back inside the palace, the true significance of Captain Thompson's quick action became clear to everyone involved. A serious accident had been prevented through professional vigilance and decisive intervention. The incident would require careful documentation and review, but the immediate priority was ensuring that Charlotte understood she had done nothing wrong and that the security team's actions had been motivated entirely by care for her well-being. The crowd below gradually dispersed, carrying with them happy memories of seeing the royal family and having no idea how close they had come to witnessing a terrible tragedy. For them, it had been a perfect afternoon of royal tradition and celebration. For those who understood what had really happened on the balcony, it had been a sobering reminder of how quickly dangerous situations could develop and how important professional security training could be in protecting those who might not always be able to protect themselves.